Welcome to the bonus disc of Revelations. This is all the behind-the-scenes footage that went into making the movie. Now, we were so impressed with what all the artists did to make Revelations, we thought you might enjoy seeing it. Now, Revelations is a low-budget film. It was made for under $20,000. A quarter of that cost went into paying for the camera, which was the Canon XL1S. That was my camera A. The camera B was a Sony DSR 500 DV cam. We thought you might want to see how the costumes were made, how the CG was done, how sound design went in. All the aspects that went into making Revelations, we've tried to cram into this disc for you. So we hope you enjoy it.
Quiet on the set, please. Quiet. Stand by.
Rolling.
Slate. Action! Our dream has always been to make a movie. We've been talking about it for years, and then eventually I was watching fan films, Star Wars fan films, and I was really enjoying what was happening with the industry in terms of these were guys who were just working out of their home or in their basement, and because software was now getting affordable, hardware was now getting affordable, I was watching and going, you know what, I think I can do this. Don, the producer, had been talking for years about always wanting to write a good Star Wars story, and I've always been wanting to make a good movie. So I went to her and I said, let's go ahead and combine the two. Let's do this and make the film.
So the first thing to do then was to write a story, and that was really tough because normally people come up with an idea, they're like, I have a story to tell, let's make this into a movie. Whereas I want to make a movie, where's our story? While we were writing it, we were thinking, what actors can we get, what locations can we get, can we get anybody who can fight, should they be Jedi? So all of that kind of was thrown into the mix, and then you kind of pick through it until you could see what you got.
When Shane approached us at Shore Leave to do this particular film, what convinced me to do it was the fact that he asked at all. It just sounded like a lot of fun.
I had lunch with my friends a long time ago, and they asked me, would I be interested in doing a fan film? And off the cuff I said, yeah, sure, expecting that this project would never get off the ground. And several years later, I picked up the phone and they said, we're gonna do it, are you ready? And I said, oh God.
I'm sorry, did we go with Revelations? I thought I heard somebody say that we were going to go with I, Declan, Hero of the Republic. No? All right.
It was really the writers, Sarah Jaworski and Don Cowings, who really created the story. We would flesh out ideas with each other, but the main idea that we wanted to do is we always wanted to know what happened to the Jedi. I mean, where is that story? And we thought it was a great story.
My writing process, whether it's for script or TV or film, is I tend to write either from the end of the movie. That's how I write my papers too. This is where I want to go, how do I get there? I also tend to write little scenes. So it's easier for me to write a big conflict scene and then worry about filling in all the places on how I'm going to get there and how the character develops.
To me, Taryn was probably a lot of what I'm not. She's very athletic. She's a very strong person. She was very dedicated to what she believed in. And when she found that what she believed in wasn't really what she believed in, that kind of deteriorates her mental well-being.
Cade is basically a very old school Jedi. He's a purist in the term. The fact that drives him is he's a character that's had his faith stripped from him. So he's kind of lost, and he's very angry and upset with it. And all his anger is focused on one character, which is Taryn.
I wanted to find Jedi for her. I wanted the Order back.
But you never suspected that she was using you.
I started to piece it together, but it wasn't until she revealed herself as the Emperor's Hand. She wanted me to be part of that. And that's when I got out.
We wanted to keep Cade and Ro as a romantic interest and have Cade blindly follow Ro, because that would be his motivation later for being so disgusted with Taryn, because he would view her as selling out and Ro as this wonderful person who would never have betrayed her own ideals.
He has a love interest in his life. She's been lost. So, and again, the reason is Taryn, that one character that he already has anger for. So what drives him the whole time is he wants all these things back. Just like all of us in life, if we had lost a loved one or had lost something that we solely believe in, that we root ourselves to, we want those things back.
We never wanted to do what we called Jedi exposition, where somebody in a robe stood up and explained the history of Keeshing, the history of Corsac. We needed to make sure that the information was naturally presented.
Ro's character ended up being a much more soft-spoken person, and in speaking with our actress Holland Gedney, she is not the kind of person who projects loudly. She is just not a loud person. So we had Ro then become even more self-contained, and she does not need to raise her voice. And yet, by making Cade's character even more passionate, you can believe that she inspires that sort of passion in the people around her.
My character is the sister of Taryn Anwar, and she sort of has these visions that everybody listens to, and she's pretty much the big, like the best seer, kind of like that I was like the most powerful and could kind of pull everything together. Like I said, I think that's really what her role is, just pulling all the characters together because she's the one they all care about.
We created a new bad guy, which would be Zhanna, the Emperor's Hand. A lot of thought went into that because we had Mara Jade as the Emperor's Hand in the extended universe, but she doesn't show up for maybe another 20 years. So we decided to retro our character from Mara Jade. We figured, well, Mara Jade has red hair, let's make the Emperor have a thing for red hair. Our character will share that similarity, but instead of working quietly behind the scenes like the extended universe Mara Jade, our character will be up front, boldly ambitious. She will go head-to-head against the newly made Sith apprentice Darth Vader, and she has absolutely no fear, and she is openly the Emperor's right hand, and everybody fears her.
In creating this character, I had to draw from several sources. I didn't have any one person that I modeled her after, but I certainly took the idea of a 1980s businesswoman who wanted to be able to make high-powered business deals, that it would not make any difference whatsoever that she was a woman and that she was just as capable, if not more so, in completing her objectives.
To make it a Star Wars movie, we have to have a dashing pilot.
Declan is originally designed as just a smuggler and basically transportation for the other characters. And as it turns out, I'm the voice of reason, very more Obi-Wan than Han Solo, I think, by the time the entire process is done. I think that's the way it comes off.
Have I ever doubted you? When you came to me, when you found out who Zhanna was? Did I hesitate for even a moment? And you? How many times have I risked my ship and my life on one of Ro's visions? Now it's a long 2-day trip to Koran 3. Your two are supposed to be Jedi. Try acting like it.
You believe that he's invested in helping these characters work out their difficulties. And I wasn't expecting Declan to be quite so well-rounded when we first created him.
Eventually, Revelations started off very, very small. It was just, us, some friends, that sort of thing. But my idea was always to be as big as I possibly could. I really wanted to take the production and do it as a feature film without the money, basically, and without the backing, without the studios, and see if it could be done. My biggest challenge was, where am I going to find these people? I mean, for free, they're volunteers. One person, the DP, Jack Foley, I worked with him previously, and he was very talented, and I liked him, so I just gave him a call and said, I'm doing this film, would you be interested in it? And he's curious. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, Star Wars, and this is the type of thing we're doing, and he was interested.
When it was first presented to me and I took a look at the script and talked to Shane about it originally, my sense of it was, well, this will be a fun little film to make. And it'll be interesting to see how they do the special effects. Then as the project progressed, it got bigger, it got more involved, it got more determined, the bar started being raised in terms of production values. We started having more qualified people show up as crew. Everything got better and bigger and better and bigger all the way through.
At the Ambassador shoot, we had an astonishing number of crew who were working professionals in the industry. And it was, since my job, I had so many other things to focus on. Luckily, some of the PAs, they would come up to me and they'd be like, would it be okay if, we get the extras, do some stretches? Because there were a lot of standing around, a lot of sitting around, and by this point it was probably 10:30 at night, so everybody had already been there for 7.5 hours. So they went through the stretches, and it kind of got everybody excited again and got their blood moving, and the extras were kind of joking around a little bit more instead of, when are we out of here? Because this day is never going to end.
One of the most rewarding experiences for me was one of the shoots that I wasn't in, and that was the museum shoot. For that day, all day, I got to be the director's assistant to Shane and Jack, and that was very rewarding because I learned so much by just standing behind them and getting what they needed. I learned about framing. I learned about getting people where they needed to be, how things looked on the camera, how to do a dolly shot, sound, all the little things that go on behind the scenes. It was like getting an entire year of college in one day.
The cast and crew of Revelations were absolutely remarkable, and Shane and I were absolutely humbled by the dedication they gave us. When we ended up finding a location at Shenandoah Caverns, that particular shoot required that we film during their off hours, which was from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. But it did require our sound guys, the DP, the Steadicam operator, everybody to have to pay for their own hotel room for Friday night and Saturday. So everybody drove about 5 to 8 hours to get out there. Then they filmed in the freezing cold, very damp, very wet caves. Then they went to bed about 4 o'clock in the morning. Then they got up first thing and they went out into the parking lot and practiced all their fight scenes. And then that night they went back down into the caves from 6 until probably about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning again.
I really got lucky. Most of all this great talent are friends of mine. Nobody gets paid, everybody's volunteering. It's a nonprofit film. So all these people are dedicating their hard work and time, energy, and money into a film that they believe in.
Costuming, that was pretty tricky. You're kind of at a disadvantage to begin with when you're making a fan film because the people who are watching it know you have no money, and whether they mean to or not, they probably hold it up against a studio level project. Mm-hmm. So it's like if you have somebody wearing cargo pants, everybody's like, oh, those are Abercrombie and Fitch cargo pants. I know exactly where they got them. A studio can go purchase that and it's okay. A fan who does it, the audience feels cheated, like you didn't put any effort into costuming. The first one with the prison, very easy. They can all look the same. So we just did some muslin and some dye jobs and just put some random things there. And once the actors, the talent got their tunics on, we said, well, go drag it through the mud. But
instead of just dragging their clothes through the mud, they put it on, and these guys were rolling in mud puddles.
They would
like
scoop
pig
it up
pen.
and smear it all over themselves.
And we're telling them, you're going to be in this outfit for 13 hours. They didn't care.
Right, that's okay. That's okay.
Well, the script basically called for about 30 stormtroopers, originally what I wanted. So I went to the 501st, which is a group or club of stormtroopers. All you have to have is your own trooper armor, or anything that deals with the Empire. If you're an officer, you could be a biker scout, a snow trooper. They even do bounty hunters, the Sith, anything that deals with the dark side.
At the club, since you couldn't see as much of the background, it's very darkly lit, there's smoke going through, we wanted whatever did catch your eye to be very bright and shiny, very sparkly. We wanted to emphasize the glamour of the club.
Jana's dress for the ambassador scene. The funny thing is, the ambassador scene really kind of came about because of Jana's dress. I wanted a reason to put Jana in an elaborate ball gown, and so we made up the ambassador scene. When it came to miking her, again, something as a costumer, miking, let me just make a dress. I'm not going to worry about how she actually has to speak in this dress or sound. The sound man was holding the microphone, trying to figure out how he was going to stick his hand down her dress to run the wire. And so there's a great picture of her standing like this while her minions are standing around her trying to hook her up to the microphone. The ambassador scene, it's really big and we need a lot of people. And luckily for us, friends kept calling in saying, I've got another 5 people, can you get them? So as we're trying to work on the costumes in the basement, suddenly we're like, okay, we got 5 more people, we got another 10.
We called in other costumers who were involved in the movie, Lori Fry in particular, to make up very simple robes. And we just started layering things on. We spent an entire weekend with a couple volunteers, Brian Sarcinelli, Joe Wilson, Megan Sherrill, Lori Fry. And we used mannequins and live people, and we would just start building up an outfit. We would put on an underdress, then we'd put on a tunic, then we'd drape a scarf, wrap an obi, start putting jewelry, a hat, until it looked like a cohesive outfit.
We had about 5 garment racks, and we had to start assigning these costumes. Initially, first we just pulled costumes together. What pieces go here, what pieces go there. Then we took a sheet of paper, we had to write down which pieces went with it, what size this was going to fit, what height, was it going to go with a mask or wasn't it going to go with a mask. We roughly matched everybody up and split it up between male and female costumes.
When I met Shane, he really convinced me that he was a professional, that he knew what he was talking about. And I actually gave him a few professional suggestions myself, not knowing that he had already thought all of these things through. So where do I start? It really comes down to the script and then blocking. From that point, I decide who's going to be in a scene, and then I come up with the choreography in its parts.
The training that I did with this picture was probably the most exercise I've had since high school. Obviously, being a Jedi, she had to be trained and she had to look like the fight experience was something that she would do on a daily basis.
I had never had experience before with any of the martial arts. I had quite a bit of experience with gymnastics prior to this, and also with various forms of dance, ballet and Irish dance and ballroom dance.
I was very excited about learning Kendo from Nick, and since he's a master, I was just thinking that this was such a wonderful opportunity, and I needed to be more sporty anyway.
One of the things I insisted on when I first met Shane was that I had to work a lot with the actors and actresses before we actually started learning choreography. So we put them through a boot camp in which they had to do a little bit of Kendo. They had to learn basic cuts, basic strikes, basic blocks. I went to my old Aikido dojo and asked permission to use that. It's a beautiful place. And I had them pick up Shinai, and I put on my Kendo armor, and we practiced just doing basic hits. And I taught them some of the basic stances, and we wrapped that particular day up with everybody attacking me with their swords and hit me on the top of the head.
The fight choreography in general for me was a new experience. I had no training whatsoever. So when Nick talks about the actors who had no training, that was me.
I had to restrict myself from creating a beat for myself for the choreography, because you're supposed to be able to take a move and to bring it at an unexpected time so that you can bring an unexpected onslaught against your opponent.
I realized that I'm really the only person that can do any of the stunts that would add some drama to the choreography. So I showed Shane this move where he kind of dips his blade under my blade after we've gotten contact, and from that I go into this big flip 3 feet into the air, and then I land on the ground. The first time we did that, we had put some padding down, and the producer heard that sound because it just echoed in the chamber, and she just said, "Cut, cut, cut."
That was me. I'm sorry. I thought somebody had me.
There are a lot of people who think that you don't need to know much to do the choreography. I won't dispute that, but I certainly know that in terms of George Lucas, one of his philosophies was that if it comes from something real, the audience is more likely to believe it. And that's where I'm coming from when I created my choreography. What someone does in terms of an attack is a real attack. What someone would do to block that attack or to move out of the way, those are real techniques based on Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, Kendo, Western fencing, and so forth. Holland was kind of the bright light in terms of, and surprise in terms of sword fight choreography. No one really expected that she would be able to pick up the moves. But when I started showing her the moves, she, of all the ladies that were doing sword fight scenes, picked it up, very quickly.
It was difficult. I'm not that good with my body moving and things like that. When I finally got the hang of it, that I looked like I was sword fighting, because that was something I always wanted to do. And I ended up leaving a few bruises on Nick's thighs. That was good.
This choreography became real. I mean, I think I had to pad my side because her boot was so heavy, and when she hit me, I would always remember it, that's for sure.
Now again, Revelation started off very small. My expectation in terms of effects was I was probably going to have to do them myself. And if that was the case, it wasn't going to look very good. I mean, I can do compositing, I'm an okay effects artist, but I'm not a CG artist. I could do rotoscoping, that sort of thing, but I knew if I had to wind up doing it all, it's not going to look so good. But a lot of Star Wars fans out there, people who love to play in that effects universe. And there are a lot of talented people out there.
Hello, my name is E.W. Swan. I live in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was the assistant technical director and one of the visual effects artists on Star Wars Revelations.
I was there on the very first day of shooting, and I even got to roll around in the mud and play a prisoner. But between shots, I drew a sketch of how Shane and I envisioned the facility would appear when we put in the CG elements.
Okay, so this path is like
this.
This.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I see.
And then Dawn mentioned sentry towers up and around.
I know there's at least 2 over there.
After the shoot, I started making models of the stuff we'd see in that shot. Things like the guard towers, the factories, the landing area, bits of rubble, and the prison itself. I was asked to incorporate the prison elements into this very lovely shot that we took with a biker scout overlooking the quarry. I took a series of snapshots from the clip with the biker scout, and I blended the sections together in Photoshop to create one giant background. Then, while I was still in Photoshop, I took the 3D rendered output and I laid it over the background. Then I started working on the animated elements, like the smoke coming from the factories, cloned footage of the stormtroopers, a scout walker, a little guy on a speeder bike, and I finally put together a sky with 2 moons in it that I was happy with. Now I had a nice background that I could land the Corvus in. I rendered the Corvus separately in 3D Studio Max and combined it with the background using Adobe After Effects. Because I was using After Effects, I wasn't really pointing and aiming a 3D camera. I simply moved the panorama and the ship along with it to simulate camera motion. Toward the end of the project, I used the experience I had gained with rotoscoping and compositing to tackle the biker scout shot once again. Using the previously created panorama, I simply masked out the foreground elements, and I was able to match the panorama with that background.
Another challenging location was the planet of Quarren 3. Wanting to avoid the classical fan film scenario of a Jedi in a forest, the entire thing was shot on a green screen. When early tests of a CG planet proved unsuccessful, the answer came to us from Lithuania, and Audrius, our matte painter. The paintings were delivered by Audrius as layered Photoshop files. These paintings were separated into multiple layers for various depth. This allows you to place these layers on separate depth along the z-axis, turning what was once flat into something with depth. Of course, each individual layer is still flat, but as long as camera movement is reasonably restricted and any edges are kept out of frame, it can work remarkably well. Moving the camera too much will break the illusion. The same technique was used on all shots incorporating matte paintings, although more in some shots than others. Only the dialogue close-ups used plain two-dimensional mattes, and even then subtle camera moves was introduced to add life to the shot. One of the most beautiful paintings is unfortunately seen for a very brief time. It's the one in which the temple explodes. Audrius painted numerous layers of dust, which I animated with various distortion filters to simulate a shockwave hitting them. And on top of this, multiple layers of pyro footage was stacked to create the big final explosion, rounding off the events on Quarren 3. But you knew everything blows up in the end, right? After all, it's a movie.
You have a lot of different visions. You have a lot of different people who want to input what they see or what their idea is. I had to make them kind of all mesh and blend together, and when I put a lot of talented artists together, it really kind of drove our story in terms, because there was no art director. There was nothing created for them to go off of, other than what was being told, what was being shared, what was being shown for all these different artists. So it was a challenge, but it really worked out because of the type of people we were working with.
I think the great challenge with Revelations was that the movie requires that great, powerful, big orchestral film score. And that sort of score is quite difficult to create if you don't happen to have an orchestra in your pocket and millions of pounds worth of recording studio. So this has been my aim for the project, to get as close as physically possible to a realistic orchestral sound, and the majority of the sounds you hear are created from orchestral libraries which are controlled via the keyboard and sequencers. It takes a lot of time to program these instruments and create all the expression and the dynamics and the powerful sound which you would expect to hear in a real orchestra recording. I do use some real instruments to add even more realism to the score, and also recording vocalists to create the grand epic choirs as you hear in some of the action sequences and some of Jeanne's key moments within the film. Base game for the composition of the music was to emulate the sound of John Williams, because of course John Williams writes all the Star Wars scores. So I've been spending a lot of time developing themes for the different characters in the film. For example, the character Jeanne has a very powerful, although moody, theme, which is in some ways similar to the Emperor's theme, and it has reflections of that, seeing as she is the Emperor's hand. I used a choir voice here to create this theme, and mixed it with some cellos and some deep brass swelling there to create that feeling of subtle anger and hate, if you like, deep within the character. In my opinion, it just wouldn't be Star Wars if we didn't have the Darth Vader theme blasting out at certain points, especially seeing as Darth Vader is a fairly important character in this movie itself. It has been difficult being on the other side of the Atlantic to the director on this film, because sometimes there's just something which I need to speak to him immediately about, and he'll be asleep or something. But in general, thanks to the internet, it really is possible to work on a project like this. It doesn't really matter where you are. Shane is a very enthusiastic fellow and an absolute genius in the way of organising people and motivating them to do his work for him. It's been such a pleasure to work with Shane, I just can't really describe. Working on Revelations has been a fantastic experience for me. I feel that I have really learnt so much as a composer, and it really is quite a special production to be involved with.
Shane.
Hey, man.
What's up?
Man, I tell you, what you guys did with that first clip is remarkable. I loved it.
How's it feel to be almost there?
After watching that clip, I stopped and said, this is the best I've felt about the movie in a very long time.
There's a couple places where it needs some sounds. The shot where the ship banks over the waterfalls, at the beginning of it, there's just the waterfall isn't enough to fill the hole.
Yeah, right.
But hang on a second, I got another call.
Okay.
328.
Did you put the garbage out?
I'm Wes Kawaja. I work at 328 Studios Incorporated, and I'm principal sound effects supervisor on the Revelations project, as well as a sound designer. The most difficult thing about a fan film is you're trying to be somewhat original in somebody else's universe. This is a defined universe with a defined set of sounds. You have, the Millennium Falcon, you have lightsabers, you have TIE fighters, you have, things that have to sound a specific way. The biggest thing about this film is there are custom ships. There are new worlds, new landscapes, new atmospheres, new everything. Terran ship is a brand new ship. Declan ship is a brand new ship, as well as there's tons of other ships that have never been seen before in this established universe. So we have to make something original for those, but they also have to fit within the original universe of which they're set. I'm going to show you just real quickly how we make some of those explosions seem real. If you look, first of all, I'll show you the clip. There's the antenna, it's falling, crashes, explosion. Here comes Declan's ship, you'll hear it. And then we have another explosion into a destroyer. Big explosion far away, and more explosions. Declan's ship flies out. So basically what we do is first we want to find a suitable explosion. That should work for the first one. It's a much smaller explosion than the rest. We'll save the really big explosions till the second series of explosions. So basically we'll just go back here. We'll find the point of impact, which looks to be right there, and we'll just paste that in so when we play it, it comes down. So we got that. If you watch it now, it just explodes and then there's no noise. So what happens is the noise just trails off. So we want to give the impression that it's flaming the entire time. So what we'll do is we'll just go in here, and I found a noise of a flamethrower, and it might work out for us pretty well. So it still sounds like there's something big going on. And there's a whole other sequence at the end, which we'll get to, but you can kind of see how exactly we sound designed some explosions.
That should push the bounty up on me.
Well, I hope you enjoy watching behind the scenes of Revelations. We're very proud of all the different artists that contributed to the film. Everyone who worked on Revelations was a volunteer. It basically was a dream of independent filmmaking with all these different artists from around the world, building in a production value that was as high as we possibly could with, well, no money. I want to thank everybody who was involved with this film because there would be no Revelations without them. That's the costumers, the CG talent, the effects artists, the writers, the producers, the cameraman, the lighting, the grips, the extras, the actors, everybody was a volunteer. And without them, there just wouldn't be any film. So in terms of everybody from our end to yours, thanks and I hope you enjoyed it.